So hello and welcome everyone to the second Include event from iAccessible. Uh, I am Manish Agarwal. I am the co-founder of iAccessible and I'm delighted to be your host for this event. We had the first one back in December. It was about accessibility and AI. We had an excellent discussion in that one, and that's when we decided we'll just do one every quarter going forward. Um, For today's format, we'll keep it similar to the last one. We will I will start with introducing iAccessible a little bit, and then I'll ask Clint here and Dave, who's joining us from Ontario, Canada, to introduce, um, and we'll have a small discussion for the next 30 to 45 minutes about culture change in how organizations can go take accessibility beyond compliance. What does it mean? What do we need to do? And so on. It is just a conversation, so feel free if you have a question or comment to to interject, raise your hand, or just say what you want to say. We are a small group, so it's good to have that conversation. We will also have questions at the end in case you um, wanted to wait till the end. For people who are online, you can put your questions in the Q&A, and I have uh, I have a couple of folks sitting here who can let us know if you have questions. Um, and we'll hang up the online stream after the discussion. So we'll say bye to Dave and the people who have joined online. We'll be here for another half an hour, 45 minutes after that for networking and meeting. We get to meet other people in the accessibility world. There is also food from Panera here in the kitchen. So in one case you want to grab a bite, you can feel free to, there are sandwiches and salad, I believe. Feel free to go get some from the kitchen, or we can also go have it together at the end. So that's the agenda. I'll get started with an introduction to iAccessible. So iAccessible is a social enterprise that I set up with the intent of connecting product makers to people with disabilities. It is built on the premise of nothing about us without us. Um, Everyone on our team are people who have lived experience of disabilities. In my, I'm blind. I've been driving, in my years of driving accessibility at organizations like Microsoft and other large enterprises, I realized that a lot of product to really make products go beyond basic compliance and make truly equitable and inclusive products, teams needed input from people with disabilities. And iAccessible has that mission where we hire people with disabilities. Everyone on the team, as I mentioned, has lived experience of disabilities and is an expert user of assistive technologies. And then everybody is also on top of that and a trusted tester certified expert. That allows us to give a comprehensive set of accessibility services to organizations. We do usability research. We do the regular accessibility audits or assessments. We do design reviews. We do trainings on accessibility. We've been working with partners like Adobe, SAP, Microsoft, the Compass Group, and others. Adobe had this to say about iAccessible on their official blog. iAccessible is a beacon in the quest for inclusive technology development. And I cannot be more proud of like what we've been able to do with those teams. You can learn more about us at iaccessible.net, or you can just reach out to me, Manish at iaccessible.net. So feel free to reach out. We can also obviously talk here as well. So that's about me. Why don't we go online and have Dave introduce himself? He's one of our speakers today. Dave.
So my name's Dave Dame, and I'll be at Microsoft probably 3 years in April. I can't believe it's been 3 years already. Previously to coming to Microsoft, I wasn't in accessibility. Sure, I funded an accessibility team, but I was leading uh, teams across Canada and LATAM. And when the pandemic hit, you really do a reflection on what do you want your life to mean and do. And I did a leadership talk on Microsoft right before the pandemic. It was probably the last live talk everybody did for 3 years. And I met people and they said, come, come, come. And then this position came up that I got, the Senior Director of Product Accessibility for Windows and Devices. So I lead a team that runs the Inclusive Tech Lab, but we really run inclusive design for both the Surface and Windows line of business. And it was interesting how much I had to learn about accessibility in my first 3 years. And ironically enough, in my interview panel, Clint was one of the people that interviewed me. So if anybody has to complain, it's his fault that I'm here. But it was really good to understand what drove me to go to Microsoft is throughout my career, I never seen other people like me around the table. They might have been in maybe the call center, but I never seen anyone at the leadership table. And Microsoft always gave me the technology platform to break the barriers before there was rights that existed to get me into things. So I thought, what a good way to bookend my career is to go where it started and kind of start making technology so there'll be other people like me around the table. And I met with some colleagues just before Christmas, and they said, wow, your job must be easier now. You go from leading like 330 plus to like 3 people. And I'm like, I think I'm working harder than I did before because working in accessibility is really hard work. It's incredibly it's incredibly purposeful, but it's a lot of work. And I remember when Clint told me that in the interview, and I didn't truly believe it until 3 years now. So that's a bit about me.
Great. Yeah. Thanks for taking the time to join us today, Dave. Clint, you want to introduce yourself?
I'll just say it. I'm humbled to be on the same stage as Dave. I have a huge amount of respect and admiration for the work he does. So it's good to be here with you, Dave. So I lead the accessibility effort for most of the Microsoft productivity experiences. That means Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote, SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive, Windows. And so my team's responsible to, when people are building a new feature, we want to make sure that that feature ships meeting accessibility standards. And and there's kind of two parts of it. Is like, does it, can we sell it to government organizations and people like that require accessibility? But then really, I think the higher purpose is it usable? Does it provide an equitable experience for people with disabilities? It's a position where I feel an enormous amount of responsibility to get it right, because I feel like the people the products, the space that we play in has such a huge role in everyday life for so many people, whether it's education, work, family. And so it's a real privilege, but also it's one of those things where I don't think you ever feel like you've quite got it right. And so you're constantly in this mode of, how do I figure out how to do my job better than I am today, tomorrow than I am today? So I'm excited to talk about culture. So I don't think I've figured it. I don't think I've got it perfect. I think I have some ideas of things that have worked for us. But I'm also certainly interested in learning from people in the audience and your experience.
Yeah, definitely. So if anyone in the audience, you have any thoughts or ideas, please feel free to chime in at any time. It's not like a formal presentation, so to say. But talking of culture, Clint, what do you think of when you think of accessibility culture, and why do you think it is important for an organization?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, when I first unpack the word culture, I think it really means, what do people do when the accessibility people are not in the room? How do they behave when you're not there? What's their default action? When you think about culture, I asked ChatGPT, like, what is culture? And it comes up with this. It's a critical component that shapes your organization. It shapes how employees interact with each other, with customers, and with the wider community. A positive culture can foster collaboration, innovation, and a sense of purpose, while a toxic culture can lead to low morale, high turnover, poor performance. And I thought a lot about, like, as our role in shaping culture inside of an organization. This quote from Simon Sinek really landed with me. And that is, because I think it's a lot about leadership, right? Leadership is what helps establish that culture. He says, leadership is absolutely about inspiring action, but it's also about guarding misaction.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I think the work that we do really comes down to, how do we inspire people to take the right action, especially when I'm not in the room, to avoid that misaction. And I really believe this at the bottom of my heart, and that is, engineers that are writing code, they want to create inclusive experiences. They want to create experiences that everybody can use. I think sometimes challenges come when people have deadlines above them that are pushing super hard to get to a place. And I think the other challenge that happens is when they're just, ignorance is not the quite word, but they're just oblivious to the impact of the code that they write into another community that is not like themselves.
Yeah.
And so for me, I think culture is about, how do we help educate people to know those things, so that when that question comes up, they just default to the right decision without Clint being in the room saying, did you do your accessibility test pass?
Right. Yeah.
So I think, if I just had, when I've thought about culture, and this kind of frames, I think, the rest of the conversation, I think it really kind of comes down to three things. One is about helping organizations provide clarity. Like, how do you help make it super clear to people what the right thing to do is and how to do that? I think the second one is around, how do you create urgency? Well, actually, I'd probably say synergy first, synergy next. Like, how do you create synergy with other people so that they see their peers, they're aligned with shared goals, there's reasons to do this from a metrics perspective, like lots of things we can unpack there. But then I think the third part is, how do you create a sense of urgency? Because so many times I hear people say, like, I want to do that work, but I'm going to do that after XYZ gets done. And so I think what really makes up culture is this is clarity, synergy, urgency.
Sure. Yeah. Dave, did you have something to say about this?
No, I like how Clint frames that as well. And I share a lot of the same beliefs as he does. I think without any pressure or constraints, everybody wants to do the right thing. And then, like, Clint was talking about engineers. They got crazy deadlines, they get that. But when I work in leaders, they get so much budget, they get so much pressure to ship. They want to make the decision, but they sometimes lose sight to what is the real reason why they should do that. And I remember it was my first week, and I remember a senior leader coming to me, I go, hey, I introduced myself, and they're like, why should I care about accessibility? And it took me by surprise, right? I'm like, wait a minute, this is my first week. Where's the bathroom? Like, I was still getting settled. But I said, you know what? we're all going to be disabled someday. Just some of us beat you to it. So when you design it for someone like me, you're actually designing for your future self. And that stuck because now they could see themselves in the picture. They could see their parents, they could see their loved ones. So it was really giving it clarity to what disability would mean to them, to understand and appreciate it. But then we need synergy, right? And it's really trying to build a culture, get like-minded people to really believe in the purpose and what we need to do. And the biggest challenge of those things, I like how Clint framed it, is the sense of urgency. And 2 weeks ago, it was great. When we talked synergy, Clint came with me to a senior leadership meeting where we're pushing a couple good ideas that need to be designed and built. And to have like-minded people in the lab, because we pull the executives out of their normal product day meeting where they make decisions into the inclusive tech lab where they got to see other technologies. And we showed them interviews with people with disabilities complaining why we needed to build these future things. Because these leaders, it's not lost on me. The first time they've been um, brought close to somebody with a disability is when I became their colleague. It made it more real to them because they seen I had the same pressures and responsibilities as them, but I just happened to roll around and empower a wheelchair. And so we had to bring them in there to get in that space, to know what the type of users and the synergy between my team, Clint, and we had a few other champions in the lab just really trying to get that sense of urgency that the time is now. So that really helps create the culture where we can all help each other when it's needed, because I'm sure, like many of you in the audience, there's way little accessibility people versus everybody else in the organization. And even though we're trying to build champions and partners around us, we got to remember to be united in the cause and to sometimes comfort each other when, we feel like we got beat up. Like Clint says, we'll go from highs of we're changing the world to wow, I just got beat pretty good. And then it's bouncing back and forth. But the when we get it right, and we do get it right at times, that gratification feeling of seeing how we've enabled our users really recharges us to take another battle, because it's not a continual line. It's kind of ebbs and flows. So that's
Yeah.
how I would support what Clint said.
Yeah, and I feel a part of the culture change is when those battles become easier in the longer run. I think that's when I would feel like the culture has changed. But there's one thing you said, Dave, and I've experienced this a lot as well. I go meet people and they will be like, "Oh, you're the first blind person I've ever met," or "How do you even do are you really a software engineer, or how can you be a product manager?" That kind of a response. And so that makes me ask this question, Dave. What um, do you think is the importance of including people with disabilities? How will that help you in building that culture, either hiring them or you know getting people exposure to people with disabilities, getting product teams exposure or leadership exposure to people with
Yeah,
disabilities?
I would like to add to the culture thing. I think when I noticed it was getting better, I visit Redmond every couple months. I had some of my senior leaders invite me to dinner at their house. And I know I was like the first person with a disability in that. So when they start inviting me to social things, that's when I know it's starting to become more normal.
Yeah,
So I think it's important to hire people with disabilities because, for one, you get that different lens, right? Like, as you know, Manish, like when you're blind, you become a good problem solver. Me with my wheelchair, I become a good planner and problem solver because we have to. That's what we need to do to get out of bed and that. And then combined with our education and expertise, you bring a different lens to the mindset of product making discussions. And the more they're around, the more the teams understand it. And like you said, I love it when I'm in a meeting and I don't have to say anything. People are saying, well, we need to think about how would this work in a screen reader, or how would we do this for somebody that might be missing a limb? And I'm not even saying anything. That's when I'm like, cool.
Yeah.
I'm not the one who needs to champion it. Other people were. And I remember the one time I joined a call late and nobody knew I was there. And I had a CVP say, well, if Dave was here, he would say this. And I stayed out, I kept my mute on because I'm like, cool. And, but it's still easily forgotten. So I think you never can get relaxed. It's the relearning all the time, and hiring people with disabilities in different levels. They can't just be individual contributors. You need to make sure they're distributed at all levels of the organization to
Hmm.
get everybody exposure, and different disabilities at that,
Yeah.
and get them to understand people with disabilities don't work simply to inspire people. Because I've had people so
Totally.
inspired to work, and I'm like, the mortgage company isn't inspired when I pay the mortgage every month. They're just happy I do. And so it's reminding them people work because they got a passion, but they also work because they want to create a living for themselves. And that's, I think, when it makes it more real.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I think about, hiring people with disabilities, it really comes back to creating clarity for people.
Hmm.
I think about this notion of people generally want to do the right thing. They generally want to make good decisions. Nobody shows up and says like, oh, I want to, but you got to give them a reason that like, why should they think differently tomorrow? Why should tomorrow be different than yesterday? And so I think people with disabilities have this ability to help people understand something's changed. And I have a new philosophy around product making that's different tomorrow versus where it was today. Because I believe that a lot of times people they have their playbook and they know how they build products. They've been, especially at leadership level, they've built products for a long time. When I think about this, I want to come in and I want to have a conversation with them that changes their perspective so that they view the world differently. And that really comes down to, why should I start making different decisions tomorrow than I do today? And having people like Dave in the room, super helpful. But I think you can also do these things by sharing and telling the stories of people with disabilities that are using your products, and finding ways to interject that into the leadership conversation
Hmm.
where they start to understand. I can remember how the day my world changed when I went from I saw the world one way to I saw the world another way. I met this lady named Peggy. Peggy was a project manager, and she was telling me like, "Oh, Clint, I was going down to Bellevue Community College and I was taking a class in project management, but I had to drop that class because it didn't support JAWS." That was a long time ago. But also, like in that one moment, my perspective as a product maker changed because I realized the decisions that I made as a product maker had this direct impact in this human and her ability to do her job and learn how to do her job better. And so I think when it comes to creating clarity, like for me, creating clarity is really helping the organization understand the impact of their decisions, how it has on people. And that there's a lot to unpack there, because you have low vision, you have hearing, you have blind, you have ADHD. Like there's a lot of those different things we over time want to educate our leaders about how accessibility supports the broad range of the human experience.
Yeah. And I couldn't agree more. That is the reason I set up IAccessible. And before I take this conversation further, I want to actually bring in people in the room here. I mean, does anybody want to share their experience of what they think is the importance of
Yeah, we have a couple hands
including?
up.
Yeah, please. Anyone.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Can I get your mic?
And at the top level leadership level, it's also easier to get people involved with fewer people. And again, once you activate that level of empathy, the challenge that I saw over the years was that mid-level management tier. And so how do you get them to prioritize accessibility over oil and gas or defense, or any of these other sorts of things? So like, since you're in mid-level management, that's my question for you is how you navigated that successfully.
Well, starts with optimism. Like, I really mean that. Like, when I show up in those meetings, I fully expect that they're going to fund and they're going to do the work that I need. And I go in there expecting that that's the outcome I'm going to get. But I would say it really is this top-down, bottoms-up conversation that never goes away, that you always have to keep pressuring. And I think sometimes it's it's working with the leadership above to give people space in that level when they have OKRs that they're trying to hit, to give them the room to say like, okay, we're going to go prioritize that work. I give you the right to go do that work. And I know that that's going to take us away from other things. And then other times it's working at the bottoms up where their team is coming to them saying, hey, we're not doing our customer right in these 3 ways. And we really want to go spend some time working on that. At Microsoft, I think one of the ways we really drive that is through what we call it Fix, Hack, Learn, or hackathons. That's always amazing to see that groundswell around people gravitating towards accessibility functionality. And that creates this vision for leaders that we actually can do something here. It is exciting. It is meaningful. And so then they lean in. But I think it never goes away, and it's a constant conversation. And the more you bring in the voice of the customer.
I think one thing you mentioned about OKRs is something I want to double click on is I think a part of building the synergy aspect of the clarity, synergy, urgency framework is this notion of building systems, the incentive systems in your organization to be, to incentivize doing accessibility, right? You have the right OKRs and your mid-level manager will try to meet them. So I think it's a part of it is for the organization to think about the systems that will cause accessibility to be prioritized.
We had a few more hands that were up.
Yeah.
If I can have a shot at answering that question,
Yeah.
Good one.
I can't see the audience, sorry. But what I try with middle managers is some of them are motivated by different things. So you can't use the same strategy for every middle manager. So there'll be some that get it, the heart and gold of equity and stuff, they totally get it. To other middle managers, they speak 2 languages, PowerPoint and money. So then I try to talk about the ROI of 1 billion users that will miss out, because I think sometimes they forget the user is also a customer. And I always like to say, like, I have cerebral palsy, but my money doesn't. So if you want my money, you product or service so everybody can buy it and spend it. And it just depends what motivates that. So when you're dealing with middle management, learn the human as an individual and learn their individual motivation points. Some of them might be hard to mind. Others you can show. I use lifetime value of a customer as a good metric. And I also try to show normal product metrics like acquisition, retention, and all those numbers. Because when you build it with accessibility in mind, people will be able to continue to use it time after time of all different abilities.
Yeah. Thank Dave.
Next question.
Yeah. So kind of going back to hiring people with disabilities, how do we make that hiring process more inclusive? The interview process, especially working with managers who maybe aren't used to hiring folks with accessibilities and creating that sense of belonging when they come in the door day one, because the interview process was inclusive and made them feel like they belong.
Sure. Dave, you want to take that one? Did you hear the question, or should I repeat the question for you?
No, I heard it.
Okay.
I don't know if I have a good answer, so I can speak as an interviewee. I used to not identify myself as somebody with a disability because one, I didn't want to get any special treatment and green lighted for the job, nor did I want any discrimination because I had a disability. So I used to wait till I showed up for the interview in person because I wanted to see how that hiring manager reacted to me. And then I've had people that ask me, why don't you, what is it called, self-identify? And it was because even as I'm an old dude now, I still didn't feel safe no matter how far we've come. And I got to say, Microsoft was the first time in my career that I identified as someone with a disability. So I don't know how to. I think Clint and Manish would have a better answer. But
Yeah.
as a hiree, it's just making sure I feel comfortable during the interview. And I have to say, people that have done it right made sure I was comfortable before I started the interview. Whether they gave me a straw for my water or whatever, that's when I knew it was a safe, comfortable space to interview as an interviewee.
I think my answer would be you got to train. You have to do training. You have to have the conversation about the language to use, about how to approach people. Many people have not had conversations with people with disabilities and they're very uncomfortable with it. And I think you have to go through the steps around how to help people get comfortable with it. I think of, Satya tells a story in his book about he was doing his interviews and somebody says, hey, there's a baby out in the road. What would you do? The guy's like, and he's like, I'd call 911. The guy's like, no, you go pick up the baby. And I think you have to get to the point where your people work through empathy and just, like kind of put themselves in the other person's position for a little bit and try to understand it and just lean into it. And I think training is probably the best way to get people where they're going to just instantly go pick up the baby.
Yeah,
as opposed to call 911.
Yeah, and like someone else will do it. But I think if you can also, I'll put in a plug here.
We go on to the next question. We got more questions.
Yes, please. Who had the next question?
Hi, Ankur.
Ankur, troublemaker.
I'm not the troublemaker. First of all, I'm very happy to attend this event when my two mentors, my gurus are there in front of me, Clint and Manish. So thank you so much, Manish, for inviting me. I would like to share my experience when I joined Microsoft about culture. So my manager asked me a question: how will you change the culture in the team about accessibility? How will you change that culture? And my response was similar to what Clint mentioned. I said, when there would not be any fear of accessibility, then you can say culture is changed. When our engineering team will do whatever is the right thing to do, then the culture is changed. And I'm very happy to say, and I feel proud when anybody from the engineering side, especially development team, comes to me, hey, I want to do the design review at the first time. Before I write any code, I feel really, really happy. And last thing, accessibility as per me is not enforcement, it's an encouragement, right? You should not show the fear, hey, your score will go down or you will have this kind of penalty. All these kind of things will not help you. You should change something so that they should come to you. They should think about accessibility since beginning. That's the culture change.
If I could reframe it maybe in a little bit different way, people should just know the playbook. They should know exactly what they need to do to be able to deliver that. And one of the things we do at Microsoft is most teams will provide you to the team is effectively free accessibility testing. We provide that as a shared service, and people just know that there's a playbook. When I build a new feature, I'm going to ask for accessibility testing, and it's just how we ship. So I think that comes back to when people get to the point where it's just the playbook that we run, and you've been consistent, you go over and over, then I think people start to get to know the playbook. I think we had a question over here. One more? Nope. Okay.
No, I have another question, and we'll have more time for more questions in the audience. But something that everybody is interested in is today is AI, right? I mean, all companies, the industry, everybody is building new features, new products that are based on AI. How do you see this inflection point as an opportunity to drive this culture, the accessibility culture we've been talking about forward?
Well, I'll take a stab at that. So AI is not new. We all know that there's this AI wave coming with large language models and its ability to really refactor how it's worked. But we've been using AI in speech recognition, image recognition, predictive text. There's a number of models we've been using in the past. The way I think about it is the AI revolution is coming irregardless of anything we're doing in accessibility.
Mm-hmm.
What our opportunity is to help the people that are trying to imagine a new world to understand how the features that they can build can solve for one, but extend to many. And so I think it's up to us to help articulate what are the jobs to be done that people with disabilities are struggling with or that are harder, and how can AI help do that job? And then help people connect the dots that if we solve for people that have some of the most critical, acute needs, that ends up building something that's going to be more broadly useful for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think this is an area where leaning in and telling the story about how AI is starting to change the world for people with disabilities, putting them on stage as we start to roll out new features about how they're using AI to do things more effectively. I think that builds synergy inside the teams that are building AI to really want to lean into this story. And I really believe that large language models and the innovation that's coming out over this last year is going to have a disproportionately bigger impact in people with disabilities. It'll have a big impact in everybody, but I think that the disability community is going to want to lean in even more. And so I work on our Copilot team. I have tried to every week share a story with the product makers that are building Copilot about the feedback I'm hearing from the disability community. And Dave, we're going to put him on stage, and he can even share his lived experience of how AI is changing the world for him. And I think bringing that voice to the product makers so they can connect the dots.
Yeah, and Dave has interesting stories. So Dave, you want to comment on this one and maybe tell a story or two?
No, for sure. I think I got M365 Copilot. It was either right before Christmas or right out. It was like my early Christmas present. But I started using it first on Teams, right? Because as somebody, what I used to do was I would work 8-9 hour days, but then I'd have to write down my notes in OneNote from all my meetings. Once I started using Copilot on Teams, I got a transcript of my meeting. It would give me a summary. So instead of taking an hour and a half to do my notes at the end of the day, it was taking 20 minutes. So imagine I was getting an hour and 10 minutes back each day just from that. So that was my first step. And then I was looking at Outlook because, how many of you in the audience do hundreds of emails a week? I would personally pick and choose which emails to respond to. because even if I finger typed it or if I used Dragon, it was incredibly exhausting. People don't realize how exhausting it is to dictate. It's not like you're talking with your friends. You're over pronunciating. You're really making sure you're speaking in written format for it to capture properly. But now I just send a command to Outlook to go generate an email to Clint about let's schedule a meeting for next Thursday on inclusive design. And it will generate a nice email explaining the principles and what I want. So I go from taking about 9 minutes to do an email to now I can do an email in like 3 minutes. I get it to generate it, I style it so it sounds like it's from Dave, but I can get emails out sooner. The month before Copilot, I did 57 emails. The email that I got when I got Copilot was 233. Now you might think, Dave, you're just creating like more email in other people's inboxes. But what it was resulting to is I could schedule meetings 6 days sooner because it would check my schedule and propose dates and times. Not only did I meet 6 days sooner, I could come to decisions 6 days sooner, which gave the team 6 more days to build and work, all from just getting something that we got to do every day. Like Clint said, like I didn't use it to reimagine the future. I did it to do the grunt work, to do the email that I have to do, to get the job, to be able to do the job I get paid to do, which is bringing people together and making decisions. So I went from doing PowerPoints, which took me 45 minutes, to now I can generate a PowerPoint in 8 minutes. So it's allowing me to connect with humans sooner. It's not replacing human interaction, but it's allowing me to get in front of humans to collaborate and move forward quicker. It's not perfect, but it's better because everybody keeps saying, well, sometimes you got to edit it and regenerate it. Yes, it doesn't need to be perfect to be a hell of a lot better. And that's what I love about it is it really allows me to do more and have more free time with my wife.
You know, it's an interesting story. Dave sent me a abbreviated version of that, like a 3-minute little video that he just put together and just sent to me privately. I took that video and I shared it with our Copilot engineering teams with a couple hundred people that are working on Copilot that area. And it was one of the most liked, little Facebook or Teams posts that I made, like 100, I don't know how many people, but it was just like. And I think it's just because people want to do meaningful work. We have to help them connect the dots to the work that they're doing and how it has an impact on people. And I can guarantee you that when people watch Dave's description about how Copilot's changing his life, and the next day they get an accessibility bug, they see it in a different lens. So that comes back to creating clarity. It helps create synergy. It helps drive product makers to think of their products in a different way.
Great. Yeah. So, anybody in the audience has anything to say about that one? AI and
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted, it's not a question, but for me, it's more connecting the dots of what I'm listening. And I think I agree with David when he said that you have to make it personal so that people really understand. And there's a lot of training that needs to happen to really open the space for people to learn. No, it's a constant learning. And if you're not faced with, me personally, I am the mother of 2 children with disabilities. So I probably wouldn't be in this more aware of what's going on if I wasn't the mother of 2 people that I want to make this world better for them. No,
Yeah.
so that's very personal. That makes me more aware, and that makes me want to learn about other disabilities. But I think that aspect of make it personal that really hits home makes everybody more aware and open to learn. In my
Sure, yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely, yes. I totally agree.
Should we dive into urgency?
Yeah, go ahead. What what do you think will help build the urgency to do this? To get
I mean, I think urgency comes back to a lot of pretty basic raw tactics. I think when you put a person with a disability on a stage in a public forum, you can use that as a moment to say, hey, everybody, we as a company are going to go out and we're going to tell this story about how the disability community is using our product. Anytime those things happen, I'm like on it. I'm sending an email to people. I'm saying we don't want to embarrass our leaders. Like, let's do a great work here. There's going to be eyes on us. And people respond to that. I think it's about somebody made a comment about making it fun, gamifying it. Like, how do you make it to where people can track their progress and they can celebrate? We like to track, are people meeting with disabilities? Are they having regular conversations? Are they taking training? What are the types of activities that we see the team doing from a culture perspective? And we reward them with medals and, like fun little things, little gamify things where we congratulate people for doing certain work, and we try to make it as public as possible. So the more that I can take when I see success and celebrate it and make it public, I think other people be like, oh, I want to get that as well. Another area where I kind of thought about urgency, amplifying voices of the disability community, but timelines, reviews, like putting a rhythm together, scorecards, having a way of looking at stuff. Like, I think all of those things, they become a little bit more block and tackle around doing it, but I think they're essential for a really good accessibility program.
Mm-hmm.
But probably the biggest thing I've found for creating urgency is connecting people. We have sometimes we'll have internal people that go in and do demos to engineering teams, where they just like, let me just show you how I can use your product. And I've literally seen engineers in the meeting open up their laptop and start typing code because they're embarrassed about what they just saw, and that bug that they coded inadvertently had this impact in a person.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
Yeah,
I do that all the time. I would go show them, my team, like, I just cannot use what we're building. But Dave, do you want to talk about urgency? How do we build it?
I think you guys covered a lot about it. One thing I do is like you show them the benefit of what it's had to our users, but you really, and this is gonna sound bad, but I'm not gonna clean it up. But you make leadership get the credit, feel good, like give them all the praise. Hey, thank you for doing this, because now we can get hundreds more people in the workforce. We can get them into schools. We can get them to have lives. When you can share the credit above, it gets infectious where they're like, what's going to be our big stage moment? And then whatever you need to take to get them to build it in, we follow it up with, we interview users all the time after they use our new features. Give us the good, bad, and ugly. And we share that with them, but we don't stop them. We don't stop their story of just using the technology. We get them to tell the story. Now that they can be more proficient, how does that impact their life? What does that give them? Can they go to school now? Can they write the book they've always wanted to write? Can they participate in social media to connect with smart people around the world? Can it help them get that next promotion? Can it get them to be able to pay the rent and mortgage? When they get to hear the impact of, and like Clint said, the impact of not having it. Because at my old place, I used to, when they would do an update, I would make them play it through the screen reader. And when they would hear like something repeat a million times, you would see the engineer's face in shock, going, that would drive me maddening. I'm like, uh-huh, That's what you just created. And then they never do it again. So a little bit of praise, a little bit of understanding when the gap is, but they have a short memory. You got to remind them at the next release, the next planning, the next. It's kind of like Groundhog Day. And it gets better where you don't always have to start from zero, but you can never build where you left off.
I just threw one thing on there to Dave's comment about, and that is have the courage to show us show your worst face in front of very senior leadership. I think a lot of times when we get in senior leadership, we just want to celebrate the praise and the progress and stuff. I think some of the most meaningful meetings I've shared was videos of people utterly failing at trying to do the thing that they were trying to do because they had to use assistive technology. And when you put that in front of leaders, like, it internalizes something much deeper to them than, oh, hey, we have these compliance issues or we have this problem here. Like, it puts a face on it. And I think sometimes we probably want to share the Dave Dane story about, look, we did something super cool and Dave had a great experience. Like, we have to do both. But I really try to also, when I have an internal employee come to me and say, like, hey, Clint, I can't do my job because of this feature. I'm going to do my best to make sure I clearly capture it and then share it with that team. And I found both stories are equally effective.
And to Clint's point, I found a couple things. I'll message him and he'll get me in front of that team within a day. And I recently did a video where we're struggling with one of our technologies. And this is another important thing. We've been talking about people with disabilities. I think it's also important to be a good ally. And I don't want to embarrass Clint, but I will because I'm not in the room. But he's been a great ally where when I recorded the video and sent it to the group and sent the long email, he was there to champion and support where I didn't feel alone. And that's where synergy comes in to drive urgency. So when you're saying hiring people with disabilities, also you need your coworkers to become really good allies. And because people with disabilities can't do it alone without the allies that come and support them. So I'm just grateful for people like Clint that's been an ally when sometimes you feel alone.
Totally. I can totally second that. So that before we wrap up, was there anyone in the audience who wanted to share how they maybe had an experience of driving urgency in their organization or anything else people want to ask or talk about?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, my experience, it's actually a little story with my mother and my experience with her and using an iPad and iPhone, iPads, and all that whole ecosystem is supposed to be very easy to work with. But when she is an elderly person at the time with failing memory, had a lot of trouble trying to get through, just like getting logged in and just getting to a place where she could look at pictures and photos. And going back to an experience, I used to teach computer classes, and I used to teach something called Lotus 1-2-3, and that had a really nice feature for learning. You hit escape. If you get all bungled up in wherever you are, just hit escape enough times and you're back at a given starting point. That iPad has no given starting point. You start drilling down into pages and you get lost. And that's what would happen with her. And I would kind of imagine, how would I teach somebody? I tried many times to teach her how to use it and couldn't get through. And so what Clint was saying is working towards your future self when you're old and your memory starts to fail and things that seem really easy now aren't, and that becomes a hindrance. So now we've a few years out, we're going to have a group of people that are in that role. And so the take home is kind of thinking in terms of how do you make something easy to use how do you put an accessibility where you can get to a home point, and maybe with AI, merging the AI in it, it could look at the pattern that I went through to teach her how to use this thing, and then rip away all those extra features that the programmers thought were really cool to throw in. And the marketing team is trying to drive a new sales by adding more features in a new version. So it strips it down to a assisted through type of thing. So this is a lot of thoughts, and I wasn't prepared, but
No, thank you. Thanks for sharing that story.
I just had one. I love the story. My parting thought was just, man, sometimes I go home and I'm like, okay, I'm failing, because I see the things that I want done that's not getting done, or or an employee comes to me with problems that they're facing, or like whatever it is. I think everybody that works in accessibility always probably has this vibe of, we're not getting done everything that we want to get done, and we see so much more opportunity. I think about it as, hey, we're in this for the long run. And I like the notion of just relentless and infectious optimism. And I think if you're going to be in accessibility, you have to, like, if we don't get yes today, we're going to come back tomorrow and we're going to have a different conversation. I'm going to have a different story to tell. And they know that I'm going to keep coming back. And I think for me, when I think about building that culture, it really does kind of take this kind of relentless optimism of keep coming back when you don't get the thing that you want. Realize that there's going to be another day. And the most important part is, like, I'm building a relationship for tomorrow. And by building on that relationship for tomorrow, when I come back with that ask, we're going to be farther along that conversation. But it's a journey. It's not really a destination that we're ever going to get to.
Right. Yeah, that was very well said. Dave, did you have any parting thoughts before we wrap this up?
Parting thoughts. Everybody will always ask me, what does perfect accessibility look like? And I don't have an answer, but I think all of us know what better could be. So let's not worry about perfection and just continually get better. And the last parting note I wanted to just kind of share is, someone told me once, culture is made up of two things. It's made up of two groups of people. People that feel safe that they can ask for help, and then people that are willing to give that help when people put their hand up. And if we can just create a culture where it's safe to ask for help or do better, and then be able to provide that, that is the circularness we need to drive clarity, synergy, and urgency.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. Actually, I just remembered, before we wrap up, is there anything online? There's a Q&A. Are there any questions online?
Where we now in front of people getting food.
Yeah, we can all start to get food, and we'll thank you, Dave, so much for taking the time. I know it's late for you on the East Coast. Really appreciate being here.
It's good to see you, Dave. Have a good evening.
Thanks, brother.
All right, thank you. Thanks everyone online. We'll hang up here, and we'll for the people who are in the room, we'll just have food and chit chat. Thank you. Thank you.